Okay, hello everybody and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's call. We're so happy you're here. This is the End-Stage Renal Disease Network Learning in Action Network Series, Home Modality Quality Improvement Activity. This is Stephanie Hull and I'll be your host for today's call. A few things I just want to, reminders before we get started. We are streaming the audio over the computer speakers to free up phone lines in your facility. If you need to dial in from your phone, send us a message via the chat window and we can assist. Echoes are heard usually from caused from multiple connections to a single event, so please close all about one of your browsers. When submitting questions and comments, type your questions and comments in the chat box. Make sure you select Chat with Presenter in section that's located in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. In order to reduce background noise, all the phones are on mute, but we do want to hear from you, so please submit your comments through the chat. And this event is being recorded and all the materials will be available from your network representative within 10 business days. Also, this event has been approved for one CEU. At the end of the presentation, a post-survey will appear, giving you the opportunity to share your feedback. And we do want to hear from you whether you have need CEUs or not. You can still fill out the feedback post-survey event. And then after hitting the submit button, another screen will appear with the link to the CEUs. So a reason for participating in today's LAN. You're going to learn ways to collaborate with other clinics to improve patient education regarding home modality choices. And ways to spread the best practice from today's LAN. You're going to be listening and sharing your approaches and experiences via the chat. You're going to identify how shared information could be used at your facility. And we want to apply at least one idea from today's LAN call. Something you can implement at your facility. One other thing about the LAN call, what we do is we ask that you would be able to commit to something at the end of this presentation. While you're listening and watching, we'd like you to identify and take away and implement one action item from this meeting that can directly increase the number of patients choosing a home modality in your facility. So we have two presenters today. Alan Africa, he is a registered nurse. He is the center manager for Satellite Healthcare in San Mateo, California. He has served as the manager for the past 7 years. Prior to Satellite, he was with DaVita Healthcare in Redwood City, California as a facility administrator from 2010 to 2016. Mr. Africa has a total of 19 years dialysis experience. With him today is Gale Schulke. She is also an RN. She is the home manager for the Satellite Healthcare Wellbound for San Mateo, California for the last 4 years. Ms. Schulke is a certified nephrology nurse and has a total of 39 years of experience as a registered nurse, with 21 of those years in dialysis. I'll now turn the presentation over to Alan and Gale.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good day, everybody. We are here to talk about how we can grow our home program and to share our best practices with collaborative effort and ways of making the program successful.
Next slide. Next slide.
Sorry, hang on. Oops. Got a little, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm on track.
All right, back on track. Now, our agenda, as we go on for all these sites are.
Well, change is coming, and it's inevitable that change would come. So that's one of the things we're going to address.
We're going to talk about hemodialysis staff concerns on home modality.
We're going to talk about the collaboration between in-center and home.
We're also going to do steps that we take in when we have a candidate for home.
We're going to give you some examples of how you can bring home hemodialysis and peritoneal dialysis to the in-center, and then we'll end with key points.
Next slide, please.
Next. So change is in the air. It's inevitable that things will happen due to the high cost of renal disease to this country. With the new, the recent executive order from President Trump, kidney disease and treatments are in the news. There's a new focus on home modalities. The reason for this is that it has been proven over the years that patients who are on home modalities have fewer hospitalizations. The focus is on them taking more responsibility for their health care, and there's better interaction with the healthcare team with the patient. It's a more intelligent reaction, not just do this, do that. It's more of an interactive thing. So who is creating this focus? Well, obviously the executive order, but also the HMOs, such as Kaiser Permanente, are now looking at turning the tide from in-center hemo to home. And also many physicians and physician groups. The newer residents and fellows are actually being educated in home modalities, and that is going to, in the long run, make a difference as to how we look at kidney disease.
Next slide, please. So there are still some folks out there, staff, working the in-center clinics that have the misconception that if we encourage home program to their in-center patients, they would lose their jobs. The fact is, here in San Mateo, we have been promoting home program for in-center patients since I started here in 2016 for the past 3 years. And our in-center census has remained stable at 100% capacity. Along with that, the continuous increase in the number of patients in our home modality program for the same period of time here in San Mateo. Gail?
We have actually gone from having about 60 patients to well over 100 patients, and also greatly increased our home hemo program as well. Next slide. Next.
Here are some myths and facts and false beliefs that always comes around. There will be less opportunities for RN and techs due to the transferring of patients from in-center to the home modality. They often say that my skills will eventually be obsolete because of the changes and transfer of home patients from in-center to the home patients. Less patients means less hours. Simple thinking that there will be a decrease of in-center home modality patients. Therefore, they lose their jobs.
Right. The facts, next slide. The facts are that with addition of self-care and home dialysis, there's actually going to be a lot more opportunities in cross-training. We have expanded these roles in the home modalities already here at Satellite. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of those roles that have developed as a result. There's a lot more utilization of trainers, educators, administrators, and greater flexibility in scheduling. Treatments can be scheduled based on the patient's availability and the staff's availability. They're not rigid. It's more flexible, and you actually can have times when you can take care of patients that are working with the home modality because you've expanded your hours. And home-assisted dialysis is also coming in the future as well, meaning that people will be dialyzed at home with a tech.
In addition to that, skills in hemodialysis in-center is pretty transferable to the home hemo-assisted dialysis as well. Training for home hemodialysis, self-care monitoring, like Gail was mentioned, and as simple as cannulation. Training for patients to do cannulations on themselves with buttonholes. Next slide.
Next slide. So I want to talk very briefly about some of the new roles for technicians. They are very valuable members of the home team. Most of our home programs now are hiring technicians to take some of the non-nursing tasks away from the nurses. This will vary from state to state. For example, in California, the technicians can not be used for peritoneal dialysis, but in Texas they can. So it varies from wherever you are, so of course you have to go by your state regs, first of all. But some of the new things that the techs are doing, they're helping patients develop self-cannulation skills. They're setting up equipment. The next stage equipment is one of the things that they're doing, and what's happening is that the nurses will go in and instruct the patient on how to set the machine up. But going forward, after that, the nurse does not have to be in the room while the patient's setting up the machine. The tech can be there watching them and reinforcing what the nurse has already trained, has already instructed them to do. The techs are assisting patients in their homes for the setup and the water supplies and getting the lab samples and things that they need. They're also helping patients with supply management. Patients are remarkably not very skilled at supply management, and we have our technicians sitting down with them at a computer and ordering their supplies the first few times that they need to do that. And then last but very importantly, we utilize our techs for emergency preparedness instruction. My tech has gone to the earthquake seminars. We've done the shakeout. He developed a whole program that was a half a day of instructing patients on what to do in an emergency. And being in California, you are all well aware that we have had some crises lately, and he was key in doing that.
I just want to interject something here also in terms of new roles for CCHTs. In preparation for some of our patients to go on a home hemo program at their house, obviously, we have a program as well here in San Mateo where we do self-care for patients. So they're in center and doing self-care. And when they do self-care, the patients need to be trained. And that's where the new role comes in for the CCHT. They teach them, they educate them, and while they're on their machines having their dialysis, they're monitoring them. So it doesn't limit them in terms of in the in-center where they do everything. It actually teaches the patient as well.
Anthony, I think you're up.
I am. Thank you for that cue. So we have our first polling question. Who is your home dialysis champion at your facility? So we're going to open that up to all the attendees here. I'll give them just a few seconds to answer that. And then we can share the results out here in just a little bit. We're starting to come in. We've got almost 300 answers, and I'll close the poll out here in 3, 2, and 1. So who is the home dialysis champion at your facility? We had 249 people respond, and we had 46% said the nurse is. 17.5 said they have PCT as their home champion. They have 4.9 is the administrative staff. 23% is social work. The dietitian, 1.1, and no one. There's 7.2% that does not have a home dialysis champion at their facility. So, Gale and Alan?
Yeah, so how do I develop a collaborative relationship? I think the most important thing is for the in-center and the home managers to get to know each other, to actually go and have lunch together, just get to know each other and start being present in each other's programs. You need to find a solid home champion in the center, and I'd like to say that you should not really be limited to the nurse, because sometimes other people, such as your admin, will have a lot more time available to actually talk about home.
Yes, in addition, it's really important to know all the staff in the home modality, what their roles are in their clinics, what do they do in terms of teaching patients, so that the communication is better between the home modality and the in-center. When I have to get in touch with Gale, I know exactly who their staff is in her clinic and to know who I need to reach out for certain questions. I'm sorry. In saying that, obviously we have a really good partnership with our in-center and our home modality here with Gale. I feel, yes, we have an advantage because we're in the same building. But I believe to have a better collaborative and to improve your home program in the in-center is that you need to find a partner, a home program partner, a clinic, where you can bounce off ideas and actually refer patients to. Go ahead, Gale.
Okay. So an example of some of the home champions we had an excellent administrative assistant who was such a great advocate for home, and she would talk to patients all the time. And we also have a dietitian who actually gives some hours to the home program, so she is an excellent reference as well. Next slide. We have also cross-trained several RNs and techs and admins in both directions. I have some nurses in my program who will go down and help out in center, and my tech also goes both ways, and we have the AAs also going both ways. They help out and assist when there's a need.
Yes, and I just want to set an example about this collaborative that we do right here. We had a patient, from Gale who does home hemodialysis, and as we know, to avoid burnout, sometimes we ask them, get yourself a break, go in center for a couple of days, and they'll treat you there. So this patient that we got from Gale, he cannulates himself, right? So he comes down to our clinic probably once or twice a week, 2 weeks within a year, And whenever he comes down, it sets an example. All the other patients sees the patient cannulating himself, and the interest starts growing. They ask questions. They ask the staff, "Hey, I didn't know you can cannulate yourself." Oftentimes they know how to set up the machines. So they see that. There's so much independence for that patient when they start making this up. Sorry, the screen came up. There you go. And so because of that, we built interest from patients and actually converted to home hemo and was able to refer to Gale about this.
And as a result of that, we are now currently teaching self-cannulation down in the in-center in preparation for the patient to come up and learn home hemo in the home program.
Right, and one of your CCHC actually goes down to the clinic and teaches the self-cannulation, and that's a great way of collaborating between the two.
Yeah, the other thing that we do is Alan has his new employees spend a day with us, shadowing the nurses, so they have a better idea of what we do up here. We're not just sitting at our desk and answering phones. And so they really see what we do, and that is very interesting, and they can see the case management aspect of home nurses. Next slide. Next slide.
So part of the collaboration, I think it's very important to have weekly meetings, if possible, between the home and the in-center. We discuss about backup hemodialysis patients. We discuss about patient referrals. We also discuss about transitioning patients, making sure, for example, that the labs are done, so that the transition of the patient from in-center to home will be smooth and everybody knows what they're going. We also bring this up in our monthly QIA meetings. In the monthly QIA meetings, our medical director is very, very involved in patient referrals from in-center to home modality. And again, this is the one way of tracking all these patients. One advantage that we have here in San Mateo, between San Mateo and Wellbound with Gale, is that we use a single tracking tool. And the importance of having a single tracking tool is because we use one tool that we can see all the activities that's been happening with our patients. So I suggest that, if you have a capability of having one tracking tool between you and your partner clinic, I suggest that you guys do that. Okay.
Next slide.
Here you go. Everybody has a step, and we have a step that's identical or similar to what we can find in the network. The first step usually is like we notify the physician of the patient's interest. After that, we contact the person who's responsible for the options class, educating the patient for the home modality.
Then that person will schedule a patient or patients for options classes. Sometimes they're one-on-one and sometimes they're group. And while educating the potential candidates, it's also important, next slide, I'm sorry. It's also important to educate the staff in the in-center. And one of the things that we do is we bring down one of the home program machines for demonstration purposes.
And again, this is the example that I brought in when I brought about earlier, when there's this patient who was doing home hemo and was our guest patient in our in-center, was a perfect way of showing other patients and educating our in-center staff on how home hemo is done.
It's very important to include the physician in every one of the steps. So make sure that when you've educated the patient and you have an idea of what the patient wants to do, be it in-center, home, nothing at all, transplant, whatever it is, that you notify the physician. They need to be part of this loop, and you really can't do much without them. So we encourage you to remember to inform them of the outcome of the meeting. Next slide.
This slide I got this slide from the network. It's just to show that we all have certain tools or steps that we can take. In the network, we have tools that we can use, and this is one of those 7-step tools to home dialysis. And having a process, having a system, definitely helps in improving our referrals to home modality.
Okay, you're up, Stephanie.
Thank you, Gale, again for my cue. We have our second polling question for everybody. What does your facility do to bring home dialysis to the patients? So I'll give everybody about a minute to sort of start answering the questions. And they're coming in fast and furious here, so we will just give them another 10 seconds here, and then we'll close up the poll here. All right, so I'll close it in 3, 2, and 1. So what does your facility do to bring home dialysis, hemodialysis to the patients? 27% said the HHD patients share their experiences. 10.2 do some established self-cannulation. Almost 25% say they 11.6 say they try out the HHD machine. 25% say they don't do anything, but the PD patients do share their experience. And then 26.5% said they don't do anything but plan to start. On the next slide.
And so, of course, this brings us to our next slide, which was covered in the poll. We arrange for home hemo patients to share their experience with potential patients. Oftentimes, the patients ask to talk to somebody of same age and sex. And there's a reason for that, because sometimes these patients have intimate questions they want to ask somebody, and they're really embarrassed to ask somebody who's really kind of a stranger. We, as Alan told you, we establish self-cannulation while the patient is still in center. And whenever possible, we'll bring the next stage machine down to the in-center and actually substitute it for the in-center machine so patients can try it out.
I always felt that when we had the patient go down and demonstrate, or when we have a treatment that was done in-center, and they can demonstrate how the home hemodialysis works, I thought that was very effective. I mean, I don't have my number, but I know for a fact in the past couple of months, we have 2 or 3 patients that we already transferred, to with Gale. Go ahead.
Next slide. So what about PD? Next slide. There's some misconceptions about PD that by educating your staff you can eliminate them. Unfortunately, most patients in center, their only exposure to PD is from a PD patient who had his catheter removed because of infection. And so a lot of them are afraid of this. They're afraid because they think they're going to get infected. So it's important to stress to the patients that infections are preventable. It is, if you follow the rules and you follow clean technique, you can avoid getting any kind of an infection. The other misconception is that diabetics can't do PD. Of course they can. They just have to manage their diabetes, which we want them to do anyway, so it kind of makes it necessary to do that. Diet and fluids are less rigid, but there are still some restrictions, and patients need to know that. If they're not urinating, they're still going to have a fluid restriction. You can do PD and, by the way, HHD without a partner. We have several patients who do nocturnal home hemo, and we have a lot of PD patients that don't have anybody in the home, and it's not necessary. And then one of the biggest misconceptions is you do not have to get rid of your fur family. Pets are okay, but there are limits, and we don't like to have them in the room during connections, and there are precautions you have to take to prevent from getting an infection from your pet. But we teach all that in the home modality training. Next slide.
We have the in-center home champion work together with the home modality staff. They collaborate each other. And what they do, they plan for lobby days, they plan rounds with patients to talk about home modalities. We bring down patients, and they share experience with other patients.
We also bring down the dummy tummy and a machine so that the patient can actually see what the catheter is going to look like on their belly, and they can see how it hooks up to the machine. And of course, we get the silly questions of, does that come out every time and we have to put it in every time? So we can cover these misconceptions when they see where the catheter goes.
But we also encourage patients in center because, like I said, we have a bit of an advantage since we're in the same building. We invite them to go to the second floor where we do our home hemo and our PD. This way they get an idea. Most of the time, when we have our when we have our home dialysis clinic, home hemo, it's better looking. It feels like you're at home, and they can see that they're more relaxed. That helps encourage them. Next slide.
So next slide. So the key points that we want to stress as we end this presentation is don't be a stranger. Get out there and know each other. In-center needs to get to know the managers from home, and home needs to get to know the managers from in-center. Find a partner clinic to work with.
We want to educate the in-center staff, dispelling the misconceptions. They're not going to lose their job. We're not going to lose patients. We have better, and this is actually better for the patients, and they have to know that.
And when you partner with the designated home champions, the patients will be more responsive to someone they know. So when a home nurse goes down to the clinic and makes rounds with, let's say, the dietitian that's in the home champion, or the tech, or the AA, the patients will be more open and more responsive to asking questions. Props work better than brochures. Let the patient see the cyclers or see the procedures. It's much more important. And also do some of the procedures in the unit, such as self-cannulating or even a home hemo treatment.
We have to recruit patients to talk to other patients. It's really effective when they see the difference on how our home program patients are towards the in-center, when they're more livelier and more active. Have frequent IDT meetings between the home and in-center. Like I said, we always have weekly meetings, and we also have our monthly QIA meetings. It's really important to make sure that we communicate, we have better communication and be more collaborative.
And sometimes that meeting can be a phone call or
Yes.
just a drop-in to the office of one of the managers, or just meeting with the home champion to see who's on board and who's been interested. It doesn't have to be a big hour-long meeting. It's usually about 10 minutes.
And lastly, I think we need to have a process, a system. And a use of a single tracking tool definitely helps in terms of monitoring patients on their improvement, on their transfer from in-center to home. This way, in having one single tracking tool, it makes our communication even better and be more collaborative with both centers.
Okay. Questions?
Okay, thank you, Alan and Gale. We do have some questions that have come in through the chat, so we'll go ahead and get started on those. And they're for either of you, so please just feel free to answer. Carmen says, what's your home patient census and what is the success rate of your home program?
I have 104 patients currently. It is highly successful. We have very few patient losses. Our biggest loss is to transplant. We had 2 this week, and we're okay with losing patients to transplant. We did not have very much turnover. We grew from a load of about 50-something 3 years ago to the current status of 104 patients.
Right.
Great, thank you. This is kind of to do about a patient question. From a patient perspective, how does a patient encourage staff to have a home program?
How does a patient encourage staff?
I think it is more,
the clinic.
More like, yeah, the clinic needs to, I can see maybe they need to have a talk with the medical director and say, you know, I want to do home. There isn't a home program nearby. Is there any way you can get me started on this? I haven't had that personal experience, but I do a lot of Facebook with dialysis patients. And I know that in some areas there aren't any home programs that are even close by. The nearest one is like 4 hours away. So I think that conversation has to go to the medical director who could make that arrangement and get people cross-trained to actually start a home program.
Good. Thank you. That's great recommendation. Next question here. What is your experience with the length of time from introduction or patient choice of PD or HHD and the actual successful access surgery?
Ours is pretty quick, but we're in an urban area.
Right.
It's different in rural areas, but here in the city, it can be a matter of a couple of weeks. It doesn't take long, and we have a very close association with Kaiser, so it takes even less time, and it's generally they get their surgery within the month. But rural, it might be a little bit more difficult because you're going to have to find an access center, somebody who knows how to do the procedures.
Great, thank you. Question from Carmen, and can you share your tracking tool?
I think it is. It's a satellite tool, so I don't know that we can do that.
No, and like I said, we can get these tools as well from the network. one of the slides that we showed, the 7 steps, our tool is it's similar to that one. What the difference is in our tool is that Gale will be able to see what we enter in our system immediately. She doesn't have to wait or update it. She'll be able to see it right away. I think that's one key item about our tool that we have. But the 7-step tool I thought is a perfect example and have a process.
You can also put together an Excel spreadsheet that you share between the clinics, and we do.
Like Google.
Yeah, we've had that. We've seen that tool done as well, just a casual Excel spreadsheet that the people update on a daily basis.
Okay, great. Got some questions coming in, so we'll get right back to them. A question says, no partner for HHD. Can you provide the supportive documentation for that statement?
It is actually, CMS does not require that HHD patients have a partner. It is a lot of different companies have their own requirements based on what the medical director wants, and I think that the medical director is key to developing the policy. We've been doing solo HHD for a number of years at Satellite Wellbound. We have had no problems with that. It's a matter of choosing the right candidate to do home hemo solo, because that you can think of all the reasons why you would want to have a partner, but it should be available to anybody, and I do believe that CMS has made that statement that home hemo and PD should be available to anybody who wants to do it regardless.
Perfect, thank you. Cheryl asks, what best practice have you adopted to transitioning PD patients to HHD?
That would be self-cannulation. And I think the fear of cannulating themselves is the one that holds them back. But if we can teach them and have them get over that fear, everything else will be easy.
The rest of it's easy. That needle phobia is a tough one.
Right.
And so as we said, we start that self-cannulation in center while the patient is on dialysis downstairs. It cuts up to 2 weeks off of the training they have to do upstairs in the home department.
We are actually currently doing that right now.
We have 2 patients.
With 2 patients doing that right now.
Right. What is the mean age of your home patients?
Good question. I know that I did an evaluation of this about a year ago, and I found that over 60% of my patients were under the age of 65.
Okay, great, thank you. Question, we have a single nephrologist at our facility. He is very reluctant to allow patients to perform PD, indicating that they need to have a high renal function in order to be able to perform a PD. Do you have any suggestions how to change that misconception?
I think there's a lot of statistics out there about patients who are anuremic, who do not urinate, who do not have high kidney function that are on PD, and that we have a lot of patients in our clinic. I think that you might have to look at the research and present some papers to him that he can read about this and how PD is even helpful with patients who don't urinate. Obviously, PD is a very good choice for patients who do still have kidney function, but that shouldn't restrict them from being on PD.
Great. Good advice. Thank you. A question, how's your home program staffed? How many RNs, PCTs, ancillary do you have?
Okay. So start with our census. We have,
as I said, 104 patients. I have 1 full-time home hemo nurse. I have 5 PD nurses plus myself. I'm also both home hemo and PD trained. I have a medical assistant, a technician, and a front desk person. What else do I have? I think
besides our dietitian.
Social worker and dietitian, one full-time social worker, one full-time dietitian, and then we have some additional dietitian and social work hours that we have stolen from Alan.
We do a lot of crossover training.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if we're going to put it in ratio, it's
1 to 20.
1 to 20.
Okay. Any specific questions I can ask patients as a dietitian to see if I can refer them to home modality and discuss them in IDT?
Any specific question?
Is the dietitian asking?
As a dietitian to see if I can refer them to home modality and discuss them in IDT.
I think that the dietitian, it doesn't have to be a dietitian-directed question. It can be just a general question. If you have somebody who is self-managing, who does a very good job with managing their medications and their diet, that would be somebody that you might want to bring up in IDT as somebody you might want to talk to about doing a home modality. Dietitians are remarkably smart about all of the patients in the clinic and everything that goes on with them. They're natural leaders for some reason. So they really make very good champions, home champions, and they make good recommendations because they know who does what they're supposed to do. And also, if somebody has problems with phosphorus, nocturnal home hemo is really a very good route for phosphorus clearance.
Right. Let's see, Rhonda says, one of our barriers is that patients do not want to be a burden by taking dialysis to the home. How do you advise we talk to patients about this?
The social worker has is a good way to start for these patients. But for them to be a burden to the home, actually, they have to start thinking about also, like, there's a lot of independence here. In switching to home. It's actually more of a burden going to in-center. I'm always calculating the time of a patient that goes to the in-center from their home, waiting for transportation, waiting for them to get onto the machine, when they're done, stopping from bleeding, and again waiting for their transportation to take them home. If we look at the average probably time of each patient in-center, when they come to dialysis, it takes them probably 5 hours, almost half of the day, half of the day. Whereas if they do their dialysis at home, if they're, let's say, doing a home hemo and they're 2.5 hours per treatment, they don't have to travel. They're at home already. They got to get on the machine. Before you know it, all in all, they're done within, let's say, 3.5 hours of dialysis, and they don't have to travel.
And they don't feel bad. Also with PD, patients who do PD on the cycler are doing it at night, so there's really no burden. They wake up in the morning and they go about their day. A lot of our patients are workers. They work. And so I don't see how that is a burden to the family when that person can actually hold down a job and bring income in.
Right.
So, the social worker is a real good person to go to for this, and talking to the patient about how this is not really a burden. And we try to get a 6-month commitment from patients, and we find that after 6 months, they're doing just fine, and they don't ever want to go back to in-center.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Let me see. How many early starts do you have, and at what GFR, if you have it?
Sorry?
Well, early starts. Meaning
okay.
Kaiser likes to put patients on at about 8, a GFR of 8. And actually a lot of our doctors like to put them on. We also do what's called incremental dialysis, meaning that they don't have to do it every single night, which is the norm for PD. We have several patients that are doing like 2 cycles per day, or who are doing dialysis 5 out of 7 days. But when they come in and they are doing incremental, we make sure that they really fully understand that they may have to go to more dialysis further down the line. But they try to start them early enough because the truth of the matter is home patients are better prepared for transplant. They're healthier, they do better. And I like to end that with they just are more ready to be transplanted. We had 2 this week, and another one last week. So it's a good example of transplant. But I hope that answered your question.
Great. Do you have catheters in your home hemodialysis program?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
We have 2 patients that cannot have fistulas or grafts that have permanent catheters. We have one that's a bridge right now, and I'm sure we'll have more.
All right, great. So how often does your home hemodialysis patients do their treatments? Is it the same as in a center 3 times a week? Here in New York State, insurance covers only 3 treatments instead of 5 per week. That's why our home program is on hold.
Okay, Medicare actually does pay for more treatments. You have to have a reason. It's very important to understand that when patients come to HHD, oftentimes they're coming because they can't get the fluid off without dropping their blood pressures. Most of our patients do, we have a wide variety. We have some patients that do every other day, and we have some nocturnal patients that do every other night. We have one who does 5 nights out of 7. We have one lady who has heart issues, so she dialyzes 6 days. And we have not had a lot of trouble getting reimbursement from this. And California is pretty strict as well. But we give them the reasons why we're doing this, and that seems to relieve the burden of reimbursement. I would say most of our patients are doing between 4 and 5 per week.
Yeah, I want to say usually 4. And usually that extra treatment that they have in the 4th is always justified as long as you have an order, because of fluid retention.
High phosphorus.
High phosphorus.
A number of reasons.
Number of reasons that
It
are
has to
accepted.
do with it has to do with how you word it and what code the physician uses for that extra treatment.
Great. Thank you. Karen says, some staff believe in myths on their hours will be cut, like you spoke of. How do you work with staff on this?
Well, in our clinic alone, in San Mateo, like I said, our census never changed. We're still in full capacity for the past 3 years. When Gale started her home program, there were just under 60 patients, and now they're over 100. Our census remained the same. We're full capacity. As we know, we're always going to get patients, and not only permanent patients for in-center. We got backup hemo patients. We have AKIs. We have all these patients that comes in center-wise. So that myth about losing work because of lesser hours really never occurred to us, and we've seen this in other satellite clinics as well.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
We haven't had to. Satellite has over 23% of their patients on home modalities, and the in-center capacities are still very high. We don't have a single center that has actually dropped their in-center census because of home. So, you can take it that way, and you can look at the statistics. There's just a lot of people getting sick.
That's right, and just to let everybody know, I'm hiring right now. Right. So we need more.
All right, Alan, let's move on.
Hey, you can't blame a guy for trying, right?
I'm trying.
So, who pays for the machines? Now, they're not specific. I assume home and or PD machines.
The rent is paid for by the companies. We pay for the machines. The patient does not pay anything.
Perfect, thank you. And a question, how many of your patients are performing solo or independent HHD? How many?
I think I have 3 that are totally solo, and a couple more who have a partner, but the partner's not always there when they go on. Right now I have 11 home hemo patients. We just really started booming with HHD. I have 5 waiting to be trained. So, we're not the largest home hemo group, but we have a fair percentage.
About 35%.
Yeah, about 35 to 40% do it independently.
Perfect, thank you. A question, is the HHD done like nocturnal slow HD? Oh, excuse me, is the HHD done like nocturnal? And then question, slow HD?
It can be done nocturnal. You can, and we actually suggest that for patients with phosphorus issues, that they just can't seem to get it under control. So that is like 6 to 8 hours at night while they're sleeping. And so yes, and the blood flow rate is low and slow.
Yeah.
All right. A question for the speakers. Do any of your patients start PD directly from a hospital stay? And kind of the second part, are hospitals educating them on PD as a viable modality?
We have a lot of patients that never go in center. So yes, we start them immediately. We have patients that come directly from the hospital, and what we do is we do what's called urgent start, where they come in and they dialyze with us anywhere from 3 to 5 days, all day long, just to get going so that they can get past the uremic stage. The hospitals are not as great about educating patients, but my social worker does go and sees patients that are in the hospital at the recommendation of the doctors. And we have a very active group of doctors who will call us in a heartbeat and say, I've got a patient, can you go talk to them? We'd like to get their catheter in while they're still in the hospital.
We do have some providers there, like Kaiser Permanente, that is very active in promoting home modality, and they do have their own option class as well, and besides sending the patients to us for more lectures.
Yes.
Perfect. Kind of back to your machine question. Is the machine cost included in the bundled payment?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And then does your nocturnal HHD patients monitor blood pressure? If so, how?
No, they don't. They take their pressure at the beginning. They might take one later on if they're awake still, and they take it at the end.
Okay, perfect. Do you have a protocol of how much or how less the kidney function a patient has before the patient can be referred to PD?
No, that's a physician thing. That is strictly the doctor's decision.
All right, I think we have time for maybe, probably 1 or 2 more here. So as a social worker, I think it would be cool for me to show patients in center the HHD machine. Any key points that I could share with the patients about the machine?
Oh, the machines, the key point, it doesn't take too much space. It's very efficient. It's small. It can be in one corner. I could say, it's very easy to use. The instructions when you go in training, it's as simple as a cartridge being slotted in to prepare the machines.
That's a little harder than that, but
well, a little harder than that. We want to keep it. We want to take it
as a social worker, I think that you just want to present the independence, talk to the patients about how they'll get their life back pretty much. They can schedule their treatments on their own time, on their own days. There's no set appointment. If they want to do their treatment in the morning, they can do that. If they want to do it at night, they can do that. It's more the freedom of being able to schedule your time where you want it to be, not having to run on somebody else's schedule.
And are those machines able to travel with those?
Yes.
I've seen them in an RV, you know.
Yeah.
I've seen them.
The next stage machine is about 75 pounds, but they're coming out with a brand new one that's going to be a lot less heavy, a lot less cumbersome. The cycler for PD is about 35 pounds, but the new one, the new Omnia machine, is much, much lighter and much more portable. It's about the size of a printer. So the machines are getting better as technology improves, and they're getting lighter and they're getting more portable.
Right. Let me do one more, maybe. So trying to get through them all, but there's a couple more. So what about labs? Are they drawn in the clinic? Do patients push their own Hectorol or push their own Venifer? It's kind of a lot of questions in one.
Labs are done in the clinic. And HHD, in our company, they draw their own labs and they drop them off at the clinic. In one of the other big companies, they actually mail them to the lab. But we do teach them how to draw their own labs because you can't actually do a pre and a post on an HHD patient in the clinic. So we have to teach them how to do it.
And what about the meds? She had asked about Venifer or anything like that.
I believe some companies and some states allow patients to push Venifer. A lot of our patients give their own EPO. EPO, not Epi, I'm sorry, EPO. They're on oral calcitriol. They're not on Hectorol or they're taking them orally, so that they don't push those. They are not allowed at this point in time to hang antibiotics or push antibiotics. That usually ends up having to come in center for the duration of the IV antibiotic.
They have to take oral antibiotics.
Yeah. Or they can take oral antibiotics if it's appropriate.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I still think I can get one more. What is the requirement for the water supply for HHD?
It's the same as in center. It has to meet AMI requirements. They do a sample of the house water.
Or ISO requirements, isn't it?
No.
Is it
No,
AMI?
it's AMI. We take a sample of the patient's water at home. We test it for AMI. If it meets the standard water, drinking water requirement, then they can do it. There are some issues with some of the wells in certain areas. Believe it or not, one of the problems is when you have an artesian well, it's too clean, and so they can't actually use net stage with the clean water. It's too clean, so they have to use bags. There's also areas like in the Central Valley of California where there's a lot of toxins in the water, such as arsenic and fertilizers and things of that sort. And those patients, we have them use bags. So there's two ways to do home hemo, with the pure flow where you have the water processed or by bags.
Great, thank you so much. And I think it's close to the hour and we need to wrap up. And I just want to take a moment to thank Gale and Alan today for taking time out to share their success story there in San Mateo and how well they've collaborated to build their home program over the last couple years. We would like to hear from other facilities that have a nice promising practice related to increasing their home modality. We want to hear from you, so if you are one of those facilities, we're going to be looking for scheduling for 2020 our LANs, and if you are wanting to share some best practices, please reach out to the NCC, and we'd love to have you on one of our upcoming calls for 2020. You can always follow us on social media for any updates. We're on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or visit our site. We would love to hear from you. And this is going to really conclude. This is our last LAN for 2019, and I hope everybody enjoys the holidays in the next couple weeks, and we look forward to seeing you on our next call in January 2020. Thank you again, and thank you again from our speakers and everybody who took time to join us on this LAN call today. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.